Han Dynasty, 206 BCE to 220 CE, had carried China for 4 centuries, a golden age where empire, philosophy, and the written word flourished together. Scholars refined Confucian thought into the backbone of government, poets, and historians, giving language a new elegance and permanence. This profound time of creativity and thought also brought about inventions, from paper to seismographs. The Han united vast lands under one vision, leaving behind libraries, codes of law, and a literature that became the measure of all who came after. Yet even as the dynasty fell, its brilliance cast a long shadow, shaping the turbulent centuries that followed, a time when old certainties collapsed and new voices began to rise. The magnificent Han Dynasty, similar in many ways to the Roman Empire, would, like the Roman Empire, come apart from corruption, internal struggles, and external pressures. When the mighty Han Empire fell, the next 400 years, China would find itself in near constant chaos and continuous instability. Large numbers of ethnic Han were driven south from their historical homeland by the non-Han nomads. The nomads would control the north for the years 311 to 589. Han intellectuals also made their way south, often to Jiankang, known today as Nanjing. This was still a time of intellectual advancements, particularly from Jiankang. Taoism as a philosophy and religion continued to grow, as would Buddhism. Confucianism was held as a political philosophy, but otherwise gave way to Buddhism and Daoism and other philosophical and religious areas. History certainly repeated itself in back-to-back examples in China in a total time that eclipsed more than 1,600 years. The Zhou Dynasty was a powerful Chinese empire that reached its peak 2,700 to 3,000 years ago, but would fragment into hundreds of years known as the Spring and Autumn and Warring States eras, times of constant warfare, chaos, and instability. The Spring and Autumn and Warring States eras were a great time of philosophical development within China. This would end the emergence of the short-lived but powerful Qin Empire. The Qin Empire united China, but would only last 15 years. This set the stage for one of China's golden ages with the Han Dynasty. The rising of the Han Dynasty is where the repetition occurred. The fall of the Han Dynasty would then have the same thing that happened to the Zhou Dynasty. There would be hundreds of years of chaos following a great empire, times of constant warfare, but eras in which philosophy and literature prospered. Each time of chaos was followed by a short-lived but powerful empire of reunification. The second time with the Sui Dynasty. The Sui Dynasty, like the Qin Empire, united China, and like the Qin Empire, lasted a short period of time, only 37 years, again setting the stage for another centuries-long Chinese Golden Age. The second example was with the mighty Tang Dynasty. When the Han Dynasty fell, China splintered, a time known as the Three Kingdoms era, with capitals at Chang'an, one of the historical capitals, or today known as Xi'an, Jiankang, today Nanjing, and Chengdu, the city today known as the center of the spicy Szechuan cuisine. The Three Kingdoms were known as one of the most dangerous eras in Chinese history, with multiple famines, various plagues, and civil war. Estimates have China losing 25% of its population. Epidemics broke out more often than once in 20 years, and sometimes even more frequently. The Records of the Three Kingdoms is a Chinese official history written by Chen Shou in the late 3rd century CE, covering the end of the Han Dynasty, 184 to 220 CE, and the subsequent Three Kingdoms period, 220 to 280 CE. It is regarded as the authoritative text for these periods, compiled following the reunification of China under the brief Zhen Dynasty, 266 to 420 CE. The work chronicles the political, social, and military events within the three rival states into a single text, organized by individual biography. The records are the primary source of information for the 14th century historical novel, Romance of the Three Kingdoms, written by Luo Guanzong, considered to be one of the great four classic Chinese novels. In 1994, Chinese TV made this into a series of 84 episodes of 45 minutes apiece. 400,000 Chinese were used to make this series. Even to this day, Chinese are very familiar with the story. Yet from the ashes of the Han, Romance of the Three Kingdoms tells not just a tale of battle, but of loyalty, strategy, and the struggle for legitimacy. At its heart stands three great powers, Wei, Shu, and Wu. Their generals, statesmen, and strategists became larger than life. Cao Cao, brilliant yet ruthless. Liu Bei, noble yet fragile. Sun Quan, steady and pragmatic. And above them all, the sage-like strategist, Zhuge Liang, who embodied wisdom and a weapon sharper than any sword. The novel paints war as both brutal and strangely beautiful, a stage where virtue and treachery, destiny and chance collide. It celebrates bonds of brotherhood, like the oath of Liu Bei, Guan Yu, and Zhang Fei in the Peach Garden. And it warns of ambitions unchecked, where the lust for power consumes even the greatest of men. But beyond its heroes, in battles, Romance of the Three Kingdoms is a meditation on the cycles of history. Dynasties rise and fall, yet the ideals of loyalty, cunning, and righteousness echo on. For centuries, Chinese readers turn to its pages, not only for stories, but for the lessons in strategy, statecraft, and the frailty of human ambition. The Three Kingdoms became both memory and myth, a reminder that even in the darkest fragmentation, China's culture continued to weave legend into history, and history into the soul of civilization. Cao Cao was a storm, swift, relentless, and unafraid to drown the fields in blood. He believed in momentum, in striking first and hardest, in bending men with fear as much as loyalty. His armies moved like fire in dry grass, chaotic, consuming, yet driven by his iron will. For Cao Cao, war was not a dance, but a hammer, each blow reshaping the destiny of China. Zhuge Liang was the wind, invisible, patient, and unyielding in subtlety. He conjured victory, not with numbers, but with vision. Where Cao Cao trusted raw power, Zhuge Liang trusted time, letting seasons, terrain, and deception become soldiers in his unseen ranks. His armies moved like mist over a valley, soft, silent, but suffocating in their inevitability. For Zhuge Liang, war was like a chessboard, each piece placed with precision, each gambit unfolding like poetry. Cao Cao sought to master the chaos of men. Zhuge Liang sought to master the harmony of heaven and earth. One won battles through force of command. The other won through the elegance of foresight. Together, they are the twin poles of strategy, the storm that rages, and the wind that endures. A strange phenomenon happened in this time, in that some of the fiercest, most brutal of men turned to poetry. Men who ordered massacres, who were accomplished warriors, pausing to write of a reflecting moonlight on the river or the fragile emotions of life. We expect warlords to roar commands, not to whisper about loneliness. And yet, in this shattered world, the sword and the pen were not enemies. They were companions. This began as the Han was collapsing, and was, it seems, somewhat common in the Three Kingdoms era, but would to some extent carry on for a few hundred years. The question might then be asked, were the most capable and violent of men pushed to the edge of their emotional capability? Or was a cross-disciplinarian way of thinking and deep education the source to keep men not singularly focused? I will only touch briefly on these warlord poets, but there were numerous. I will stick to the legends from the novel of the Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Cao Cao's brutality was enormous. His invasions cost between several 100,000 to over 1 million lives. He depopulated entire towns. Deaths came from slaughter, battles, famine, starvation, fire, and cannibalism. He also didn't always win, causing a tremendous loss of lives among his own soldiers. They even had to turn to cannibalism for survival. In his words, I am Cao Cao. The world calls me cunning, ruthless, without pity. They are not wrong. Better to betray the world than let the world betray me. And yet, when the armies sleep, I look to the river. Its waters run endlessly, rushing towards the sea. I see my face in the current, once fierce, now fleeting. I command legions, yet I cannot command time. I conquer cities, yet I cannot conquer my own loneliness. Wine is my solace, moonlight my confidant. When music plays, for a moment, the weight of crowns and corpses fades. But only for a moment. Tomorrow I must harden again. Turn my heart to steel, sharpen my will. For the world does not forgive softness. Yes, I am a warlord. Yes, I am a poet. One half of me seizes the empire, the other half mourns its emptiness. This is my truth. In victory, I am lonely. In poetry, I am human. Cao Cao's sons were Cao Pai and Cao Ji. Cao Pai, like his father, fought an endless number of military campaigns. He writes of military fatigue, destruction, and brutality of war. His words are written in deep melancholy. Known as one of the first romantic writers of his age, the other son, Cao Ji, wrote with even greater emotional intensity in addressing grief, injustice, and unfulfilled ambition. Warlords Liu Bei and Guan Yu, legends of the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, were also examples of great warrior poets. Liu was known for his genuineness, writing of grief, loss, and loyalty. Guan Yu, the red-faced general, the man who held loyalty until death, left little in his own hand, and yet, strangely, he became one of the most literary figures of all. Later centuries gave him poems, inscriptions, entire plays. They imagined his voice as if his very life had been a verse, a poem of loyalty, dedicated brotherhood, unwavering righteousness. Guan Yu shows us poetry as legend, where the man himself became the poem, written not in ink, but in memory and myth. Zhuge Liang, mentioned before, was said to be able to control the winds and use poetry to manipulate the armies he was up against. The Three Kingdoms would briefly come together under the Han Dynasty in 266, but internal warring would leave it weak, and several nomadic invasions occurred, including over 30,000 being slaughtered at the capital of Luoyang in 311 CE. The Western Zhen royalty would then leave Luoyang and move to the former capital, Chang'an. The nomads then sacked Chang'an. In 317, the ethnic rulers, left with large numbers of Han locals, establishing the Eastern Zhen Empire in Jiankang, 750 kilometers or 450 miles to the southeast. The Han, then, would not rule their homeland until the Sui dynasty in 581 CE, but did maintain their empire in the south of China. Most of the Han people remained in the north, under the non-Han rulers. Those who migrated were more the elite, such as the ruling families and intellectuals. Migrations to the south would occur for centuries. The 4th century, still under the nomad rule, had 3/4 of China's population in the north, but by the time of the Tang Dynasty, a few hundred years later, the north and south populations were about the same. The first migrations to the south were in numbers large enough that the Han quickly outnumbered the non-Han population. The nomadic rulers and warriors of the north were quick to adapt the Han culture and language. This to me seems common throughout history, in that the conquering nomads had a greater appreciation for the domesticated lives of those whom they conquered than of their own culture. They would adopt the domestic cultures, languages, religions, philosophies, educational systems, and customs. Buddhism slowly moved into China during the Han Dynasty. The nomads in western China embraced it more quickly than the Han. The Confucian Taoist models of religion had a hierarchy that did not include the nomads. The nomads then assigned Buddhism to be their state religion. They would proclaim themselves Dharma kings, and to show their power, built Buddhist grottos and stone statues of Buddhas that stand today as some of China's greatest feats and tourist attractions. When Buddhism first entered China, it did not come in its original Indian form. It came already clothed in the art and ideas of the Greek world. Greek immigrants to India before Alexander had many converts to Buddhism. Then the easternmost of Alexander the Great's empires would adopt Buddhism. The Greek artists of these empires would depict the Buddha in art as a person. This was the first time. The curly hair of the Greek god Apollo became the curls of the Buddha. The Greek halo of Helios became the radiant aura of enlightenment. The robe of a philosopher became the robe of a sage. The Buddha in art was also given square shoulders and a thick chest found in powerful males in Greek art. One of the most astonishing achievements of this time in China was the carving of entire mountains into sacred Buddhist worlds. They also served as shrines, pilgrimage sites, temples, and an example of power for the non-Han rulers. This tradition did not begin in China. It first took root in India at Barabar under Ashoka the Great in the 3rd century BCE. The tradition would create this in 1500 caves in India. From there, it traveled across Central Asia along the Silk Route, reaching the deserts and valleys of China, beginning first in the 3rd century in the west of China. The first Chinese grottos appeared at Mogao in Dongguan, simple meditation caves adorned with painted Buddhas. Soon the work expanded. Hundreds of caves filled with brilliant murals became a sacred archive of Buddhist art and scripture. The ambition over a short time grew immense. At Yungang, near the Tang, thousands of artisans carved colossal Buddhas directly into the cliffs. Some sit over 50 feet or 15 meters tall. Their serene gazes, carved with chisel and hammer into stone, that has endured for 1,500 years. These were not just works of devotion. They were monuments of power, proclaiming that the nomadic rulers were protectors of the Dharma and rightful kings of the vast empire. Later at Longmen near Luoyang, the style matured. The Buddhas became more elegant, more refined, their faces softening into the calm grace of Chinese aesthetics. Rows of bodhisattvas and guardians lined the grotto walls, carved with a delicacy that rivals any masterpiece of world art. The scale is staggering. Mogao, nearly 500 caves survive, their walls covered with tens of thousands of painted figures. At Yungang, over 50,000 statues. Longmen contains over 100,000 images of the Buddha, from towering colossi to figures smaller than a hand. Imagine the labor, decades, even centuries, of ceaseless carving and painting. Thousands of anonymous artisans chiseling devotion into stone. The effort is almost unimaginable. The artistic beauty undeniable. What began as an imported Indian practice became something uniquely Chinese. Vast sanctuaries of faith and empire, where stone itself was transformed into the body of the Buddha. I'm baffled by what I am about to explain. 4th century Su Wei wrote what seems to me the most remarkable poem ever written. She wrote it to her husband to bring him back, and invented what is called a palindrome poem. The poem is written on a 28 by 28 grid. Poems can be read forward, backwards, crossed rows, columns, up, down, diagonally, and circularly. 400 years after this was written, scholars have said they have found over 7,000 poems in this. Today, others claim to have only found something like 3,000. Another way it was written is the next rhyming lines continue the poem. The poem is titled The Star Gauge. Su Wei's husband returned. The story of Mulan is from this era. It was originally a song, but throughout history has been redone many times in written form, plays, and most recently in 2 Disney films. It is a story of a young woman who fills in for her aged and poor health father, who was a proud war hero. This was originally from the time of the nomadic non-Han ruling northern China. It is thought Mulan was likely from one of the nomadic tribes. Women of these tribes were exceptional horse riders and archers. She then certainly would have had the skills to make her a warrior. Later stories of Mulan likely combined the original story with the story of Princess Pingyang, who would organize and lead an army of 70,000. Princess Pingyang's efforts would lead to the establishment of the Tang Dynasty, one of China's golden ages. Many believe China's greatest dynasty. From the ashes of the Han, chaos gave birth to genius. Empires fell, yet the spirit endured, transforming war into poetry, loss into wisdom, and silence into art. Civilization did not end. It evolved, and in that evolution, humanity discovered a deeper truth, that even in ruin, beauty endures. And through endurance, the soul becomes eternal. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, have a great day, and I will see you in the next video.